PA's Audit Risk and Assurance Committee meeting on the 3rd of November. Everybody's most welcome. Could I just say that if I drop off the call, I'm Mary Pitt-Keithley and I'm the chair, but if I do drop off the call, I'll ask Grant McRae to take over as the chair until I can get reconnected.
Okay.
So we do have apologies this morning from Katrina Stewart. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you very much then. This is the first ARAC meeting where staff from Grant Thornton are attending. They're taking over as our external auditors, so welcome to Joanne Brown and anyone else who's here from Grant Thornton. I look forward to meeting you when we can meet up in person again, but nice to meet you, Joanne. Now, do we have any declarations of interest? I have nothing that was notified before committee.
No.
Thank you very much. And we have before us as item 1.3 the minute of the meeting held on the 14th of July. So can I just ask if members are content to accept this as a true record of the meeting?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next item is item 1.4, the action log, noting some matters arising. There are 3 issues here where it's proposed that each of them should be closed. Is everybody content with that? Thank you very much. And finally, it is proposed that items 6 to 9 would be taken in private. Can I ask if members are content to agree that? Okay. Thank you very much then. Get on to the substantive items on the agenda then, and item 2.1 under the heading of Audit and Improvement Progress is an internal audit update, and I believe it'd be John McNellis who'd be taking us through that one. Morning, John.
Thank you, Chair. Just taking the paper read, a couple just quick updates and points to highlight. First of all, since the paper was submitted, we've been asked to remove the internal audit of organisational learning. Police Scotland had advised that the report needs a bit further work discussed internally, and that will now come to the January ARAC. Another point to highlight is that the timing of the desk internal audit has been changed. We received a request from Police Scotland to see if we could push that a little bit later in the year to avoid clashes with the desk pilot. So we've been able to do that to Q4 of this year, which will still allow the audit to happen within the financial year. And to counter that, we've brought forward the audit of Police Scotland compliance work. The second part of the review is the normal internal audit progress recommendations, which is fairly self-explanatory. And again, the further 2 reports that come on from the agenda bring out some of those delayed recommendations. We're also joined by Paul Kelly from Azets, who may wish to add anything further on this update.
Thank you, John. Morning, Paul. If you wish to add anything, now's your chance.
No, thank you, Chair. Morning. Nothing really to add to what John said. I think the report, both elements of the report are pretty self-explanatory, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions or comments on this report? I think it's quite straightforward. It's a pity we don't have the organisational learning audit update, but it will be coming to January, which means we'll have quite a busy agenda in January, I think. So look forward to seeing that then. If there's nothing else on this item, then our next item is item 2.2, and that's the Police Scotland Audit and Improvement Recommendation Tracker for Q2. And I think it's ACC Spears who's speaking to this one.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Good morning, folks. I had a moment to try to get off my Teams, so nice to see everyone. This is probably the second time that we've presented the audit tracker in the dashboard format, which I hope is quite informative and easily to follow. Just a couple of introductory comments from myself, and then Donna, our audit manager, will maybe take through and draw 1 or 2 highlights from the report. As you can see at the outset, we've got 144 recommendations that are ongoing, with a further 54 have been added since our last meeting, which demonstrates the level of audit and inspection that's ongoing just now within Police Scotland, and a proportion of them, 17% currently of those recommendations, we would consider to be high risk. with your agreement, Chair, I would just invite Donna to pull out one or two of the key highlights from the report.
Yes, thank you very much, Donna.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So thanks very much for the invite. As the ACC says, we've got 144 recommendations that are open. At the time that we produced this report, which was towards late August, we had 20 closures that were confirmed, but another that were on track for closure. I can confirm that we've got another 16 that we had closed in that time period. So you'll have further updates in relation to those that weren't achieved at the next update. In relation to those closures, and to create a little bit more of a balance in terms of what we're reporting here, I've provided some information on the sort of more significant things that we have closed out of those 20 recommendations, and just a bit of a narrative, and that is on slide 3 of the slide deck at Appendix 1. As well as that, we have tried to provide a focus of those recommendations that we are tracking, that are important to us, and we're putting a bit of emphasis on them, and that is detailed at slide 4. They are typically ones where we've maybe got quite a number of recommendations where we maybe have high risk and we're trying to prioritise the completion of those, or where we have done a substantial amount of work but we've got 1 or 2 recommendations to complete that full publication. So we are working on those, and that's really just to show you that there's a planned approach to this, and to give you that assurance that, you know, we're taking the updating of these and the addressing of these seriously. In relation to those that have been delayed, we have 87% of the recommendations on track, which is a substantial number. There are some that have been delayed and that you have seen previously, a change to how we've presented it previously. So this time we are showing you only those that are newly delayed in this quarter, and they are provided within slides 6 and 7, and they all relate to the hate crime publication. We had a comprehensive review of the work ongoing and the work still to be done, and it was felt that some of the timescales needed to be readjusted, and I think that is indicative of the significant amount of work that is required in this area, but also there's always other dependencies that you maybe didn't truly foresee, or the complexity of the work. So there's some delays, and the delays are provided within the updates on slides 6 and 7. And in relation to the other delays, we are providing assurances that we are making good progress with the recommendations. We're still closing a high percentage on time, and we have a heavy focus on those that are high risk. All of the delays have to go through our internal governance structures to have approvals from the directors and the ACCs before the delays can be accepted, and there's always good justifiable reasons why that is the case. In addition to that, I've provided the slide in relation to the recommendation trends, which I would have to say is fairly static, month to month, quarter to quarter. The biggest proportion of our recommendations is updating our guidelines and just delivering on better practice. We've provided an age profile there, and as you would expect to see, we have the highest percentage of recommendations open in the most recent years and a lower number in previous years. So that's what our focus is, trying to really deliver on those that are the sort of oldest, but they tend to be the ones that are left that are the more complex. And I think that is all I have to say.
Thank you, Donna. Do members have any questions or comments for either the ACC or Donna? Paul and then Grant, thank you.
Yeah, it is the aspect on slide 7, hate crime training review, which is a recommendation from last year, June 2021. It says, it's the thing that concerns me about this is being delayed for another 6 months. I think it is until August 2023. The thing that concerns me is it's saying that they should review and revise hate crime as a matter of urgency. And I'm wondering how effectively 2 years from when this was set is urgent. That's, you know, what is the rationale for delaying it, and do you think this is urgent enough?
I can provide an answer because I think I've got further detail that's not provided on that slide. So we have undertaken the training review and we have made the adjustments as necessary, but there are some residual work that we need to do to build that into future training, which we're still waiting. So there's a residual amount of work still to do, but the substantial work has been done in terms of the training. And we have presented all our updates so far and our progress so far to HMICS to give you that assurance, and they are satisfied with the work and the progress that we've been making. And we took the decision to readjust the timescales and we updated them at that time as well. So it's not that a training review hasn't been undertaken, because it has, it's just not fully complete.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Grant, just a moment. Alan, you've got your hand up. Is it on this issue? Do you want to come in on this issue?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. It
Yeah,
is, and I just wanted to probably reinforce the kind of articulate update that Donna's provided. We have done that training review. We continue to deliver the training. We continue to enhance the training, and I guess just concluding the recommendation is about ensuring that we take on board all the implications of the more recent hate crime bill. So I generally think we're in a good place, and it's probably just more around the administrative aspect of this, picking up with the work that we're doing, but we are in a good place in terms of the actual delivery of the training programme in force.
Thanks, Alan. Paul, are you content with that? Thank you very much. Grant.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to raise exactly the same question as Paul, but I have one other. On slide 9, Donna, there are, I think, 3 recommendations that go back to 2017, 18, 18, 19, and so on. Could you just remind us what sort of recommendations these are? I'm thinking that to some extent, if they're going that far back and they haven't been actioned, are they urgent, are they important, or have they been overtaken by events, for example?
Okay, I can provide that information, no problem. So the one that's outstanding for 2017-18 is relating to undercover policing. And this is probably our longest open recommendation, and you'll have seen the updates for this in the past. So it is in relation to providing an integrated records management system for undercover policing. So it's very much ICT dependent. And the reason that it has taken so long is that we have been looking in the market for a product. We originally went out to get a product, but during the testing, it was found not to be suitable for what we needed it to do. So we had to then go out to the market again. So we have another product that I can tell you now, it has been tested and it's waiting to go live, and it will be live by the end of December. In the meantime, this recommendation was around having a lot of paper-based records, which wasn't really very auditable. So back at the start, when the recommendation was made, undercover policing made some changes to consolidate all of the records that they have, and they put them all onto one spreadsheet, and they put in place an audit regime. So in that respect, it mitigated a lot of the risk, and this is just to bring it further and automate the full process. So that's in relation to that one.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
The 2 that are open for the next year, 18-19, they are in relation to events policing. And they are both dependent on demand information to be provided that will help events policing plan and understand the resourcing requirements for events. But our demand and productivity unit is still relatively new, and only this year they have opened up to the national divisions to work with. So they've been trialling some products that will be suitable, but we're still in that trial phase. It's not been fully rolled out. So they're really quite complex. We've addressed all of the other recommendations within those events policing. This will make it much more scientific, I guess, but it's extremely difficult just with the data that we have and the available resource that we have to put it into every area of policing. So I hope that I've done those justice.
Yes, thanks, Donna. That's very helpful. I think it probably just reminds everybody that when there are recommendations coming through of the importance of coming up with realistic timescales for what can be done with the recommendation in terms of are they being accepted, are they being implemented, and being realistic about all the different challenges to transfer us from, shall we say, paper to technology and all the other things that go in between. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank you.
Grant. Thanks, Donna. Does anyone have any other questions? And I think from what you're saying, we are beginning to see progress even with these very long outstanding issues, so that's good. And hopefully we'll soon be able to take these off altogether. I just commend the format of the report again. I think we do really find it helpful to have the dashboard and to have the report set out as it is. And I think what we can see and what we can hear from you today is that we've got, where there are delays, these are often down to IT issues or resourcing issues. So, you know, it was ever thus, I suppose, but it's important that we keep an eye on them and we don't let anything slip too far. So thank you very much, Alan and Donna, for those for the report. Oh, sorry, Grant, did you still have your hand up? Is that just a...
No, I beg your pardon.
Sorry.
I thought I'd taken it down.
Yeah,
Apologies.
thank you very much. So the next item is item 2.3, the SPA Audit and Improvement Recommendations Update. Is that John?
It is. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, John.
First part of the report, again, is our progress on our SPA corporate business plan for the year. Pleased to say at this point, a third of our milestones have now been fully completed. And in total, 91% of our milestones are either on track to be completed or have in fact been completed already, which is great progress. And all of those that have been rephased or delayed, we're confident at this stage that all will be completed within the financial year. I did want to just pick out some updates since this report was written, just because of the timing from when this committee would originally have taken place. So you'll see there are one or two actions that should now have been completed. So just to highlight those, on ICBS, which is 3.4, both of those actions have now been complete. We now have an ICBS vision and improvement plan. On mental health, which is a little bit further down, 3.7, that work has happened now. There's been a report presented to PPC in October, and we are hosting a mental health policing event in December now. And the last point to pick out is 7.3, related to finance training needs for board members. We have done the work now to engage with board members to find out what finance training needs they may wish for. And now we're just working on identifying what kind of training opportunities there might be internally or externally to fit those needs. The second part of the report is updates on SPA improvements and recommendations. Again, fairly straightforward, but again, two things just to highlight in terms of overdue actions that have been sitting for a while. So the Section 83 agreement has now been signed by the SPA Chief Executive and is with Police Scotland. The latest update we have is that the Chief Constable has delegated that to DCO Page to consider. We're still waiting for just a signed off agreement, but the end seems to be in sight now. And lastly, on training package or Moodle package has now been fully developed, and actually that will be going live very shortly. We hope then to have a deadline for those training to be delivered by the end of December. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Lynn, you wanted to come in?
If I may, Chair, thank you and good morning to the committee. Just to update you, David and I have been in discussion about Section 83, so we have agreed a deadline of the end of November for that to be signed off, but there are no issues. There's been a lot of discussion, particularly between the respective legal sections within Police Scotland and SPA, and I'm personally delighted that we will get it over the line by the end of the month. It has been outstanding for 9 years. So just another couple of weeks is not a problem, and it will really help us go forward. Just wanted to update you on the timeframes. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, well, maybe takes the prize for the longest outstanding item, does it? The sense of relief you will get from getting this one over the line, I can just imagine.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions or comments from any members? No. Okay, thank you very much for that report, John. That was helpful. The next item is item 2.4, Strategic Planning Interim Progress Report. And I think that would be yourself, Kirsty Louise.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. When we discussed this strategic planning audit with committee in March, we were asked if we could bring you an interim update on progress in terms of implementation of the recommendations of the audit. So I've tried to give you as full detail as possible within the report. All the timescales within the audit have been met or will be met. Everything is fully on target. One of the key areas to highlight in the previous discussion was around implementation planning for strategy. And we agreed with the committee that for the next strategy that the service would bring forward, we would have a full implementation plan. At that time, that was expected to be violence against women and girls. But as you'll be aware, we've done some significant extra engagement around that with the community's public and survivors. So the first strategy to SPA was actually the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion strategy at board last month. With that, we did provide a full implementation plan, and work is underway to carry forward all of those actions and put everything in place. With the report, I've also provided you with some of the evidence that has been prepared and has been assessed by auditors, and the strategic planning framework that will be both published in the updated strategic police plan and has been reviewed in full and agreed by the Police Scotland Executive. I hope overall that's helpful to reassure on the work underway in terms of the audit, and if there's anything else I can clarify or any questions, please do let me know. I'm really happy to pick those up today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Katharina.
Good morning. Thank you, Kirsty Louise, for the report and for this update. Really appreciate this. I read the paper, and I have to say there's a couple of things where I wasn't quite sure if I was understanding this appropriately. So if I could maybe ask a question and a follow-up question depending on if you answer. So on page and my question relates to the development of implementation plans, which I think was obviously, as you've acknowledged, one of the main recommendations that has come out from the audit work. So when I think it's paragraph 2.3, where it says implementation planning, the approach to implementation planning has been considered by the service and is set out at the outset of strategy development. So I have to admit, I was a little bit confused as to what is meant by the service, and whether, what you're referring to here, whether that's the implementation planning approach or whether this is specific to the strategies that we have seen come through that has the implementation plan attached. So if you could maybe just expand on that, that would be really good, please.
Thank you, no problem. What we mean by the service, we mean Police Scotland. So when we decide that it would be appropriate based on the evidence to develop a strategy, we take a full strategic planning approach through our governance within Police Scotland. Within that report, we set out everything that we will do to develop the strategy in terms of developing the evidence base, engagement with SPA, and equally how the plan will be implemented. So to set out an implementation plan will be developed as part of the strategy process, but equally the business area that will lead on that implementation, or where it's more wide than one department, for example, equality, diversity, inclusion, the main sponsor and then the named leads will be set out within the plan. So I guess what we was trying to say is at the outset of every strategy, we're being really clear about the lead role in terms of implementation to ensure that there's accountability and we're able to track how the strategy then lands and we perform in relation to that overall. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. May I just have a follow-up question? Yeah, thank you. No, so that makes sense. That is helpful. But if I understand this correctly, then what effectively you're saying that you have identified where the ownership of the implementation planning will sit. So it sits within the business area, etc. So that's quite clear. But I think some of the audit work was specifically related to an implementation planning approach. And, you know, to me, an approach generally encompasses not just the ownership, but also, to say, a methodology, etc., and kind of some of the tooling. And so that you know, when we're getting, because to me, the strategies at the moment that we get, they seem to be consistent. You know, there's bits that we recognize as they're all component parts are there. So there is an approach to achieving that consistency. And I was wondering, you know, to what degree you're kind of drilling down further into, well, you know, it's not just about this is where the ownership is going to sit and that's going to be quite consistent and the governance is consistent, but it's the underlying kind of scaffolding that sits underneath that. And I, you know, I appreciate we're still early days, so I'm not expecting a full-blown update, but is that within your thinking or?
Yeah, so as part of the approach pack, we include the implementation plan and how that will be done. And we also include within that kind of the content, so drawing in elements, as you'll have seen in the EDI plan, setting out where there are financial implications that have yet to be identified, investment needs, setting out where the resources available to take forward the plan to ensure those activities can take place, and aligning to the performance framework overall. So the approach to the plan is that my team will support the business area to develop a plan that includes all of those core and key elements to ensure from a assurance and a perspective, oversight perspective, that you can see what we're proposing to do to deliver it, how we're going to fund it, resource it, and how we're going to know when we've got there. And that's the approach that we've included in our reporting and that will be taken forward.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Grant, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Kirsty Louise, thank you very much for what you've laid out. I've just got a couple of questions in relation to Appendix A, paragraphs. Well, first of all, paragraph 10, which explains in the last sentence that Chief Constable will present the strategy at the public SPA board. And then I wonder if you could just give us a little bit more flesh on the skeleton of that, whether it's actually, is he doing this on a plan? Is it planned that the Chief Constable will do this item by item, or is this some sort of overview, overall summary coming to the board?
The Chief Constable will bring all of the enabling strategies to the board once they've been considered by the appropriate SPA committee. And if I use an example, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion strategy was considered with the People Committee on a couple of occasions and then was brought forward to the board. The Chief Constable then introduced the strategy and then the senior lead gave some more detail at that meeting, which was DCC Taylor. The agreement within the Memorandum of Understanding is that the major enabling strategies that sit within the framework will be brought to the board for agreement.
Right, thank you. And if I could do a follow-up to that, the next paragraph is paragraph 11, and I wondered whether, in fact, paragraph 11 should come before paragraphs 10 and 11 should be reversed.
Yep, we can do that. Paragraph 11 was really just me setting out and referring to the governance framework for the SPA and the provisions that were set out in Annex D, so that it was really clear that this was around the enabling strategies for the service.
And the reason for raising it is because we all know that we're in a very tight financial position, and a number of the things that people would like us to do, and Police Scotland would like to happen, will probably be subject to the financial availability of funds. So therefore, I thought perhaps it could be confusing if a presentation goes to the board and then has to be almost put on the back burner until funds are available. It might be better to do it the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Yes, yeah, there's not much point agreeing something if we find out afterwards that we've not got the funding for it or the ability to take them forward. Thank you very much for that. The report is helpful, even just as a reminder of what the enabling strategies are, and you know there's quite a number there, and the two that were in development. You've mentioned one, the equality, diversity and inclusion. The other one was violence against women and girls, and that's at a very advanced stage as well, it's my understanding. So that will be another one the Chief Constable will be bringing to the board fairly soon, I would imagine. Okay, thank you. Can I just ask, our internal audit content with where we are with this work in terms of their recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak on behalf of Elizabeth here, Chair.
Thank you, Paul.
I would assume so, given Kirsty Louise mentioned that all the targets have been met thus far, but I will pass that back to Elizabeth to clarify.
Sure, she would have said if that wasn't the case, so thank you very much. Does anyone have any other comments or questions? Okay, well, wish you good luck with the rest of this then, and look forward to further updates. So thank you very much, Kirsty Louise. The next item, and we are kind of rattling through this agenda, so we can take our time and ask lots of questions if you have any more. Don't feel rushed. But item 3.1 is the internal audit report on business continuity, and I'm passing to John initially, I think.
Thank you, Chair. We've got one internal audit report, as you say. This is the business continuity report specifically for forensic services. I think, as members will remember, at the last committee, we considered the equivalent business continuity report for Police Scotland. So this completes that cycle of audit. And the report finds 7 recommendations, of which one is high risk. Now, that high risk recommendation is effectively the same recommendation that was made for Police Scotland about an overall digital disaster recovery plan, which members spent quite a lot of time discussing at the previous committee. But also pleased to say that all recommendations made have been agreed to, and in fact the implementation deadlines for all of the recommendations are relatively soon, actually, with most of them expected to be completed by December. So that's just by way of introduction, I think passing originally to Paul Kelly, and we also have Craig Donaghy with us from Forensics.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul, did you wish to come in?
Yeah, just say a few words, Chair, just echoing what John said there about I suppose, the chronology of the report and the fact that this is a separate report largely because Forensic Services, for as long as I've been involved in services, has had its own approach to business continuity, although it does rely for areas like digital and IT on Police Scotland's IT provision, hence why the recommendation on disaster recovery planning, etc., mirrors what we had in the Police Scotland and SPA report. I think what John said, that the key issues in the report mirror those that were in the report you saw in July, and there are a handful of other more limited risk issues in the report that are specific to forensic services that I'll assume that take the report as read, but at that point I'll pause, and if anybody's got any questions, happy to answer them.
Thanks, Paul. I'm always a bit nervous when I hear that some part of the organisation has its own approach to business continuity planning. That's a wee bit worrying. But we've got Craig from Forensics here. Do you wish to say anything at this point, Craig, or just wait and see if there are any questions for you?
If I may, Chair.
Yes, of course.
At this point, we welcome the ASIC's audit of business continuity and forensic services, and as John said, that we've implemented those changes into our own management system, which is accredited 17025. That provides the framework for management of these actions and to ensure that they are completed and appropriately evaluated against the target time. So we welcome that. We will be amending the procedures and policies as required and ensure that they are effective. And we're happy to learn and take on board any good practice from across the organisation if there is things that need to be implemented to provide that assurance.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Open it up to members for any questions. Oh, sorry, Martin wishes to come in. Martin Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on the piece that was allocated to the digital division. So just to give some assurance that we are in fact working on that. That piece of work has started, and I'm comfortable that it will be completed by the scheduled date that was committed to in the audit report. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Open it up to members now. Any questions? Grant.
Thanks, Chair. I think actually Martin's answered part of my question about whether the item 3.1 will actually be complete by 31st August 2023, because the way that the management action was framed, it was talking about engaging, and I want to be sure that that meant completed by. I'm conscious that there are a number of things in this plan, and Craig is probably best placed to answer this. I'm conscious that forensics are doing a lot of different things at the moment, from new management team to taking on work from University of Glasgow, and I just wondered if, in the fact there are so many changes coming through, are you confident that you can actually implement all the different things within the time frame that are being indicated in this report?
I can. The changes are constant, isn't it? But we have implemented most of the changes to the documents as we speak. They're currently going through the approval process through the management system. So I'm completely confident that we'll be able to put these things in place adequately.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, we have consistency in terms. Oh, sorry.
Chair, you got Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No. It's the bit relating to the lack of a IT disaster recovery plan, and I'm just wondering how have we got into this situation where we don't have something as basic as that?
Craig, do you want to pick that one up, or Martin?
Yeah, Chair, I can answer that. I'm not cited on what the level of the debate was when this first came to audit and risk, but you know, the scale of the applications. So the organisation uses several hundred applications. When you layer that against the core architecture and infrastructure that is significant, substantial, and complex, I think that's the reason. We do have plans around clearly a number of our primary core systems in terms of command and control and the national systems, but in terms of a single document that we could put our hand on and say that constitutes the IT disaster recovery plan, that was the gap and the delta. So there's lots of different sets of documentation, and I think largely this exercise is about pulling that together, doing some work on what the codependencies and the interdependencies are, and then pulling it into a single document.
And are you confident then, if you are saying that what there is not as an overall strategic document that draws these together, are you confident that there are no gaps?
I'm confident that we'll certainly meet the timescale for pulling that together. I mean,
yeah, that wasn't my question though.
Yeah, if you're asking me whether we'll have a single overarching document that covers literally 7 or several hundred applications, I think the answer will be that we will absolutely have something that covers the core systems and documents that are critical to the organisation. Within all of the systems that we've got, there are various levels of resilience, contingency, and failover, and as I say, they're all contained within individual document sets, and this exercise is largely about pulling those together into one product.
Right, and will this exercise identify if there are any gaps?
Yes,
okay.
and in that regard, we have the task been allocated to one of the senior managers within the function, and that manager is busy pulling people into the exercise. We're acutely aware that this is a big ticket item, if I can use that term, and that we need to deliver this in terms of the schedule.
And should there be any gaps identified, I'm assuming those will be addressed as a matter of urgency.
Absolutely, yes, can confirm that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Martin. Any further questions then? Okay, thank you very much. We've got a number of other internal audit reports heading to a committee in January, so we'll look forward to those, but thank you for this one on business continuity. Moving on then to item 4 on the agenda, which is assurance reporting, and we have a report from the Chief Executive of the SPA in relation to oversight of change. Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say a few words of introduction and more importantly of context before I pass over to Scott Ross, who's the Head of Change and Operational Scrutiny at the SPA, who'll take you through the report in more detail. But for me, I think from this report and the one that follows on for Police Scotland, you'll see that change within Police Scotland is both complex and of significant scale. And for me, the question is, are members reassured that they have oversight of this? Very basic question. And that you know where things are on track, or more importantly, what isn't on track, that the reasons are well understood and action is being taken. So this report and the one from Police Scotland is designed to do that, and I will welcome feedback from yourselves on that. And the other key point I want to make is the sort of system review we've put in place is putting review where it is most appropriate and proportionate as well. So the committees are very much involved because they are close to the business areas where the change is happening. So with that introduction, Chair, I'd like to pass, with your permission, to Scott Ross, who'll take you through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Over to you, Scott.
Well, thanks, Lynn, Chair and members. I don't propose to read through the paper, and I will take it as read. However, I did want to present some of the slides that were in Appendix A, if that's okay, and I'll try and attempt to share my screen now, if that's all right. Can members see that on the screen?
Yes, we can, Scott. Yeah.
Excellent. Members will be aware, I should say actually, this presentation was submitted in September, so some of it may be slightly out of date, but I'll try and update verbally as I go along for members. Members will be aware that change encompasses everything from policy, procedure, changes, implementation of strategy and programmes and projects. And members will also recall that HYCS recommended improvements to the effective governance of change and transformation as part of their 2019 review. We've come a long way since then in that review, and members will recall at ARAC Development Day in October last year, members agreed a refreshed approach to the oversight of change, and this was further endorsed by members in December 21. We sought to begin implementing this approach, and this paper is part of that from April 22, so this financial year. So still a new approach and still somewhat in its infancy, but it's embedding well. This new approach sees ARAC in this kind of slide here, so the third one down, as primary committee to oversee change at a strategic level and have the ability to signpost specific RED programmes to other committees for more detailed discussions, as the Chief Exec has described. And similarly, committees can also post back to ARAC key items for oversight as well. This kind of slide gives an overview of that approach that was approved, and I just wanted to highlight is section 7 in the bottom right here, that we plan to move content from this report that's with you today to the annual report and account, to give a summary of the year in terms of SPA's committee's oversight of change. It was requested that we produce this paper as a kind of interim solution to getting to that position where we produce it annually within the annual report and accounts. However, Police Scotland change paper, which is the next item on the agenda, will be continued to be presented on a quarterly basis to ARAC to give members assurance of change within Police Scotland. With this approach in mind, I wanted to give an overview of some of the change that was underway within Police Scotland and highlight some of the committee's oversight of change over the past year. So here we've got Policing Performance Committee. As you can see, it's taken a number of items around naloxone, drones, cyber, taser, and we have subsequently had a PPC meeting due to this one being rescheduled, this ARAC being rescheduled, and it again saw drones, etc. there in terms of oversight. Resources Committee has seen a number of business cases and other items with regards to change, so from fleet, from analysis, performance unit transformation, enabling policing of the future programme, etc. So it continues to have a kind of key role in the approval process of business cases and oversight of change as well. People Committee, as members will be aware, is also overseeing Your Voice Matters, the people strategy coming through, leadership development and training and development opportunities as well, and change related items in relation to that as well. Forensics Committee has seen biometrics, Forensics own change programme have overseen that as well as drug driving, criminal history system and post-mortem toxicology and the major project that exists within that at the moment. In terms of the Police Scotland portfolio as a whole, I did want to, the next item goes into that in a bit of detail, but I just wanted to highlight that the portfolio status is red at the minute. There are 6 change programmes which are red, 4 which are amber, 5 which are green. And this will differ slightly from the next paper on the agenda. As I said, the papers were submitted back in September, so therefore changed slightly. In terms of future oversight, I wanted to just tell committees briefly that we can anticipate some key items over the coming months. Contact assessment model, HMICS assurance review has been to Policing Performance Committee, and we expect an improvement plan in the back of that to come to explain what Police Scotland are doing to try and resolve some of the recommendations. The spending review and prioritisation of the portfolio, there's due to be a session with resources members later in November to talk about what that looks like in terms of impact of change across Police Scotland. The end project report for mobile working will be presented at Resources Committee. The body-worn video initial business case will be presented at Resources Committee as well, I think in November, if not December. And finally, I should say that this approach seems to be maturing in the SPA as we continue to embed it. For example, Policing Performance Committee in December will oversee the digitally enabled policing programme. So it will have a detailed update on the core operational solutions system project, which is rolled out in several divisions now, and the impact that that's having on operational policing and the overall timescale for delivery. And we've also had Policing Performance Committee recommend to ARAC that they take an item in January, which is a productions remodelling deep dive due to the risks associated with that. And the reason that we have desk deep dive today here at ARAC is, again, resources recommended that oversight continues on that programme through the other committees. I'm happy to take any questions from members, Chair. However, given the content of the next paper is a detailed update on the change portfolio by Police Scotland colleagues, you may wish to wait until after this item to take questions, but I'm happy to take them now if you wish.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. So it may be that members want to hold questions about specific parts of the portfolio, but if there's any questions at this stage on the issue of our oversight of change, then I think this would be the appropriate time to take those. Is anybody? Katharina.
Thank you very much, Scott, for the paper. Really helpful, and I'm really encouraged by seeing this paper and seeing the approach, because I think that definitely is a quite a robust way forward. And on that one, I suppose that rather than having a question, I just have an observation. So the spending review, so paragraph 3.3, and also the portfolio roadmap 3.4. So I suppose when it comes to the prioritization exercise, what I think from an oversight perspective certainly would be really helpful is if in that sort of whatever we are being presented with ultimately as the outcome of this exercise, is that we can kind of see, particularly for activity that is being kind of prioritized as slower down, or where on the roadmap we can see that, well, it's either being pushed out, or it's in fact being suspended or delayed or whatever, that there's a linkage to the risks, particularly the strategic level risks and the more substantial or operational risks, because ultimately most of the change activity is there to help us address some of the risks that this organization is facing. So that's the ultimate aim of any transformation, is to make a more secure and sustainable organization. So where we're making those really difficult decisions, I think what's really important is that linkage of not doing something and the risk that is, then continues, that is being made as explicit as possible, because at the end of the day, it's not about the benefits are important, etc., but that risk dimension is really important. So, because quite often the risk of doing nothing is, that doing nothing is a really big risk, particularly as the world around us is changing. So I know I'm preaching to the converted to some degree, but it's just a plea from me, because I think from an oversight perspective, that is really quite important, that linkage.
Thank you, Katharina.
Can I just come in and then I'll pass
yes,
to Scott?
Thank
you very much. And Katharina has a really valid point. And we'll make sure that we pick that up in assessments, because there will have to be prioritisation going forward. We know the financial envelope that we're going to be faced in terms of flat cash. So, and that risk assessment, the do nothing, is actually a very simple but effective question. So we'll do that. I'll just say if Scott wants to add anything, Chair, if that's okay. Scott.
Yes, of course.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Chair. No, absolutely, Catherine. That's a very valid question. You know, I would fully expect that kind of briefing to members when it comes forward from Police Scotland should be around the framework through which they made those decisions in terms of prioritisation through, and you would expect some of that would be the risk of not carrying on with something. So, what is the extent risk within Police Scotland at the minute, which basically caused us to have the project in the first place, and by not continuing on with that, or maybe delaying delivery by 24 months or whatever it may mean, what does that mean for that risk, and how are we planning to manage that with the resources that we do have if that isn't going to deliver for the next X amount of time? So I would expect some of that detail to be as part of that briefing.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very important that we take account of the impact of not doing something or aborting some work that's already taken place, and that distorting the priorities that we come up with. So, yeah, really helpful. Grant, did you have your hand up, or did you?
Katerina has covered exactly the ground I was going to, so that's
yeah.
thank you.
You've asked all our questions, Katerina.
Yes, thank
you. If there's nothing else on that, then it's obviously very closely linked to the next report, which is item 4.2, the Police Scotland Change Portfolio Update, and I believe it's Martin Lowe who's taking us through that one.
Chair, I think it's actually Kerry McKeever, that's going to lead on this. Thank you.
Kerry, very welcome. Hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So a bit like Scott's intro, this paper was submitted a couple of months ago, so it has probably moved on, but I think it'll be more devil in the detail around that than the report itself. So again, I wasn't proposing, I'll assume everyone's read the update. I think the key thing was, again, as Scott had mentioned, this is I think this is the second time we've brought this sort of format to ARAC. So again, we're embedding this as we go. So again, happy to take any feedback on it, Chair. But I'll pull out a couple of things just from the report, and then I'm happy to take any questions on it. So I suppose the key thing for us was to look at what is currently sitting within the change transformation portfolio. So again, as Scott mentioned, change covers multiple different things within within Police Scotland, but this is primarily looking at the change portfolio itself. Excuse me. So this was looking at deliverables from beginning of July to sort of middle of August. So some stuff will have moved, but hopefully this will give you a flavour. So in the report, it looks at the portfolio design. So I'll touch on that and where we are with that. Some specific delivery items where we've had some change engagement, because that was a conversation we had here last time, and some of the key risks and issues. And I suppose to the point that's just been made, that's absolutely forefront of any decision we make is the risk to not doing things within the organisation. So, since the last report, I'll just touch on the portfolio design because it's a hot topic. Obviously, the spending review has exacerbated some of the work that we need to do within looking at what the portfolio looks like. And I think we mentioned here last time that we were looking at what the portfolio may need to look like for the remainder of this year and then into next year. So that work is still ongoing. You'll see in here, a proposed draft of the portfolio is sitting with the executive team. We talked about this at Change Board just this week, and we're looking to bring that back to the board next month. So obviously in our next update to the board here, we'll be able to provide an update. But just to give you a bit of context, that was primarily driven at the time with the challenges we had around resource capacity, also around the ambition and also we've now got the financial pressures on there. So there's been a few different lenses played into this portfolio, but to give you some level of confidence, hopefully what we've looked at that is looking at what the organisational priorities are. So things like C3, response policing, etc. What our pipeline of activity is versus where we are with things that are in design and delivery, etc. So we've taken all of those things, if you like, and had a look at it. We're not proposing that anything stops at the minute. There is a proposal that a couple of things will slow down, but nothing that is going to increase our risk to anything, you know, that is a strategic risk, an operational risk, etc. So I'm hoping the next time I'm here I can sort of share that with you in more detail. But we are, you know, that is ongoing, and as I say, there's nothing, you know, that is sort of our top risk that we're proposing that would close, and it would cause us any level of concern at this stage. So we've been looking at that. The aim is obviously just to firm up what we're going to do in the next 6 months, to give us that time to then look at what a portfolio looks like within the next 12, 18, 24 months. That will obviously play in the spending review piece. So again, that will come through the boards, as particularly Resources Committee, who oversees it in more detail. So they will see a view of that as we start to build that. That's in line with what we do every year, to be honest. You know, we take a look at what we're doing, what we want to do going forward, and then we'll overlay what availability of funding is there. So that's in line with our capital investment planning that we do each year. So no difference to an agreed process in there. The other thing, just to go out to call it around there, you will see as part of the new scheme of delegation or the resources will see a number of end of project reviews coming forward. So they are now starting to come through the board. So again, you'll be able to see what did we say we wanted to do versus what we've achieved as things have been delivered. And over the coming weeks, months, there's things like, I think actually NEDIP has actually been through now body-worn video for armed policing and a couple of the TCSS projects and stuff. So you start to see we've got about, actually it's probably gone up, but we've got about 13 or 14 projects that are coming to a natural end over the next coming months. So that's again a new piece of probably scrutiny that we've agreed. With regards to delivery, I'm not going to go into massive detail here. The big piece at the minute is still the implementation of CAUSE. And since this paper has been written, which I think said something like we have, you know, migrated something like 2.2 bits of crime records, that has increased. So we are talking probably about 6.6, I think, million bits of nominal data now that have been transferred. There is going to be a spotlight, as Scott mentioned, to People Committee around CAUSE. And again, we're bringing a couple of more updates to the SPA just so they can see what that actually means, because CAUSE can sound very technical, but actually it's had a massive positive impact on our operational colleagues. That's probably on the project piece. With regards to engagement, we had a national change event, and I think a couple of people were at the event. I think Scott was certainly there from the SPA. That landed really well. That was a face-to-face, probably on the hottest day of the year. It feels like a long time ago now. Now we're moving into winter. But it was the hottest day of the year, which was fun. But that was delivered sort of with stalls, etc., across all the projects that are mentioned there. And we've had some excellent feedback on that. So the idea is that we will look to do another event like that in the near future. And continue doing this style of event going forward. I think it wasn't just aimed at senior ranks; it was inspectors, etc. So I think people that that are on the ground don't always get don't always know what's going on, sort of more of a strategic level. So I think they welcomed the update, and you'll see some of the comments in there about it being worthwhile. And actually allowing them to then go out and enable change into the divisions, etc. So a really positive event. The key issues and risks, to be honest, even though this was written a few months ago, they've probably not changed significantly. The whole reason we're looking at the portfolio, along with the organisation, obviously was around the capacity, not just about being able to get resource, but we've had the pensions implications, so we're having to look at absorbability across the whole piece. And the only additional risk now is obviously the spending review, which was not party to when I wrote this paper. And then since the last update, again, we've agreed, Scott did mention, we've agreed some of the new formats and how we report to, particularly the SP Resources Committee. So we've got a new sort of template that covers off business cases. So again, pulling out the key information to allow members to see what we're actually trying to achieve, and also the end project reviews. And we're still working up the benefits piece. And again, the next report, I'm hoping to start trialing that, and then we can get some feedback on how that's working for the committee. And then, Chair, you'll see in the appendix, again, I'm not going to go into any detail, but the portfolio overview is how we report to Change Board, etc. So we agreed that we would present to ARAC the detail around some of the programmes. So obviously, as some of the members will know, the pack it goes to Change Board is very large, so I've tried to just pull out just the programme slides. But at the time, as Scott said, the portfolio was reporting red. The portfolio still remains reporting red. But once we have finished the prioritisation, obviously, and understand the spending review, I'm hoping then we can start to migrate that back to an amber status. In there, again, it just gives you a high-level summary of the programmes, their status, etc. You'll see this is a new style report because we've got a new portfolio management tool that we're using to produce some of these reports. And you'll see some of the financials have got zeros in them. That's just because we've not uploaded that as yet, and that will come into the new financial year. I'm not going to go into any detail on the specifics projects. These will have moved on because, as I say, they're a couple of months out of date now. But both will give you a view of how we are presenting some of this information. And underneath that sits detail on every single project that we have. There's information there on our change, portfolio assurance and business change. So again, it gives the board a bit of high-level view of where we are, how we are managing our recommendations with regards to both internal and external. So that can be anything from Scottish Government technical assurance reviews to ASIC's reviews to our own personal reviews that we're undertaking. There's information there on absorbability. So in slide 23 of our pack, you'll see that we have an absorbability dashboard. So that is done in conjunction with the divisions, where we have a view of where the pinch points are with regards to how busy they may be, and that takes into account everything from BAU training to key events that are happening within specific areas, to where we then overlay where programmes or projects intend to implement some training. Now, that's twofold. Obviously, it gives us a view of where some of the hotspots are, but also allows us to plan more efficiently, so we can say, well, there's no point in looking at trying to do training in that area if they're already at capacity. So again, that's this gets refreshed on a quarterly basis. We're looking to add in some additional areas such as SCD and corporate services. So it's a work in progress at the moment. There was a couple of slides at the back that were business case summary. What I would say is these slides have changed since this one. So again, on the back of the new scheme delegation, we have added some additional information. So the next time you see this, but it has gone to Change Board. So on that, it will show you where things have to go to be approved. So whether it's the accountable officer, whether it's resources committee, and also the value of each of these. So again, it will give a bit more detail around what that means, and expected dates. Obviously, again, these are always being updated, and TBC. I mean, we're always going to have some TBCs in there because things shift around. And then there's some information on the change event itself. So I put in some slides just to let the members see some of the actual feedback on the event. So that was the update, Chair. As I say, I'll stop there, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kerry. That was very comprehensive, and thank you for taking the time to go through how this works. Caused me to reflect on the fact that we've all come quite a long way since we started off looking at transformation and portfolios of change, both the SPA and Police Scotland. So there's a lot of detail here that never used to be available to anybody and was not being collated or reported, and now is. So that's really good. But I'm sure we've got a lot of questions on this, so I'll open it up to board members. Anyone? Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Kerry, that's extremely interesting material you've just presented. Very interesting indeed. I don't think I've seen the organisational observability dashboard on slide 23 before, but I think it's extremely interesting to see how different divisions have got different changes and challenges. Do you think that in overall terms, we're trying to introduce too much change, that it goes beyond their ability to be able to cope with it? Do we have to slow things down in any particular way? Because some of them, whether that's it looks orange at the moment, but there's an awful lot of it. And I wonder if you could comment on, I know that was the position in August, but how you see it all sort of unbundling, if you like, to get it all turned to green.
Yeah, I can say interesting question. Are we trying to do too much? So I think sometimes maybe yes we are. But I think what I would say though, to give the board some reassurance, so where things have turned are red or orange, is primarily where we are implementing cause. So that sort of seems to be, because it takes a significant amount of training from the divisions on top of just everything else that's going on. So although I don't think it's this allows us, I suppose, Grant, to say would we put anything else in at that time, and to how we phase things. So yes, we may want to slow things down or pause, or I wouldn't say we need to pause them at the minute. I think we might need to slow a couple of things down, but we're doing that consciously, I think. So this allows us to be able to make those kind of decisions. And to be honest, even if I look back the last couple of months, because this has obviously moved on, where things were red, nothing has, there's been no detrimental impact to either our operation, our operational capability, or being able to roll out things. If I use cause as an example, some things have moved a couple of extra weeks because we've not been able to implement the training, etc. But I think for me it's more of about when we do things. So, and we use this, we've got this actually that rolls out 18 to 24 months, but obviously it gets less accurate the further out you go, because you don't know what you don't know is coming down the track. But I think it's always a question we should ask ourselves about how much we're doing, but I think it's more about the sequencing of how we do it, if that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. And I think as we have to review what we can and can't do going forward with financial constraints, with flat cash, etc., being able to sort of overlay that into the projection for observability, I think would actually be quite a valuable tool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I thought that particular slide was really interesting, because we're beginning to see where there are real challenges, and people are saying they are at capacity, maybe potentially beyond capacity in some respects. And I do remember when the board used to be able to go around the country meeting senior officers in their local areas before COVID. And quite often when we asked the local divisional commanders what was the biggest problem for them, sometimes what they would tell us was there's just too much change that we're having to absorb and keep up to date with and take and contribute towards. And sometimes, it conflicts with the operational challenges that they had on a day-to-day basis. So, that's not changing. There's more change. There's more things are being introduced, and we have fewer people. So, there will be greater challenges perhaps, but it's really helpful to have that data and to have that information to be able to look at it.
And I think one of the things, Chair, on this, just to add to that, is we do look at this, and it's work with the divisions. So, we're not sitting going, well, we think you're busy or you're not busy. We actually, they are the ones who sign off on, how they feel that the division is working. And even then, I think what they see as a positive, and the feedback we've had on that, is the engagement around that. So you're right, before you'd say, well, it feels like we're getting a lot of this done to us, whereas now they know what's coming. And to be honest, they're as keen to do some of this change as we all are, because they see the benefits of it. So I think it's had a real positive impact, and the way we do our business impact assessments, etc., all feeds into this. So I think it is a really positive step forward.
No, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't want to suggest that they were, against change. They were all up for it and they all understood the importance of doing it, but it was the challenge of doing too much, you know, at one time. And I think the point about engagement is really critical, because if we don't engage sergeants and inspectors in all of this, it won't happen. You know, it just won't happen. So that's really important. And I'm glad to see the very positive feedback from that engagement event on the hottest day of the year. I think you'll remember that day, although it feels a long time ago. Thanks, Kerry. Katharina, you wanted to come in now?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my main question was the one that Grant has asked as well. I mean, I also zoned into this observability chart, and actually my follow-on question now is something that just was prompted by what you were saying, Chair. So I appreciate obviously the vast majority of the change that we are driving as an organization. So it's internally led, and I was just wondering if there is, particularly maybe at more divisional level, if there is anything that our partners, our wider stakeholders are doing that might be resulting in some observability, some capacity challenges, because we might need to react or respond and do certain things slightly differently, as I say, maybe on a local level, but it's not necessarily change as we would understand this, because it's not necessarily driven by us. And I don't know to what degree Police Scotland are susceptible to this, but I know that sort of within the wider public sector, everything's partnership working, and it's quite often that, you know, it's obviously ripple effects. If one partner organization does something and suddenly we have to respond. So I appreciate this is possibly taking us down quite sort of like a rabbit hole, or might not be relevant actually for us. But it's just another dimension to this. How much can our people take of change that is either being led internally from us, or maybe we have to respond in quite sort of a timely fashion to something that somebody else is doing differently.
Thanks, Katharina. Kerry, did you wish to come back in?
Yeah, I can maybe give you a bit of context. So I think what I would say, you're absolutely right, there's things that are out with our control sometimes, but what I would say around this work, and it's probably not quite as obvious in the slides above, but we are looking at a new format for that, but that we work with the divisions, and we also take into account, although we look at the transformation portfolio, the observability takes into account everything that we know, that the divisions know. So even if it's, I don't know, a local football match, I mean, we do get into the granular, we know when the key football matches are, etc., etc. But that allows the division to see that we're taking into account all their demands. So whether it be, you know, we're having to work on, and, you know, a new piece of legislation is coming down, or there's just something, all of that is actually taken into account with our observability picture. It's not just about the transformation change, actually.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, firstly, an observation about Katharina's point about partnership, I think, is that times of limited finance put massive strains on partnerships, which is to the detriment of the public, I would say, and we need to be very cautious about that. I want us to always be good partners, and I want other partners to be good with us, because the partnership working is greater than the sum of the parts. But the bit I'm wanting to ask about is just returning to this aspect, this theme of the delays, because we've got about a third of the programme is in red, if my memory serves me right. And you were talking about delays. And I just want to double check if I heard you right. You're saying that the delays are not going to massively impact on the delivery of operational services out there in the streets?
The delays of what we may slow down within the portfolio.
Within the portfolio, because what's the point of doing it if it's not going to change things that are happening operationally? So presumably a delay does have some sort of impact.
Well, it depends on what the delay is, I suppose. So I suppose what I'm saying is it wouldn't be a significant delay, so it wouldn't affect what we said we're going to do. So it may be that we have to move an implementation out by a month or so. I mean, everything is going to be very specific depending on the programme and project. But what I don't see is, particularly for the rest of this financial year, obviously next financial year we'll work into a new plan, but for this financial year, for example, I'll just use COS because we've been talking about it, but, you know, I'm not proposing that we slow that completely down and don't do it till next year. That's not what we're proposing, but it might be things where we're still in design, or it's actually still sitting in the pipeline. We've not even done a business case for it, so we may slow down some activity there, so we can resource things that we want to make sure that nothing does, as you say, we're not going to do anything that we would expect to have a very positive operational impact, either internally or externally.
So it's just the pace of change that slows down. It's not the final outcome at the end of the day. We get there in the end. It just takes a little bit longer. Okay, thanks.
Correct.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Kerry. As Paul said, there's quite a lot of red in the report, and it's potentially quite worrying. But we also have one new risk, which is about daily rate contractors. We have one increased risk, which is about prioritisation, and we've got two risks which are outside of tolerance. So I wonder if you could say something about the mitigations and the steps that are being taken in relation to these in particular.
Take myself back off mute, certainly. So the dairy contractor risk was about our reliance, because we were in a position, again, this has probably moved on slightly, so we were in a position where we were finding it difficult to recruit, whether it be actually permanent or fixed term contracts. It wasn't, and it was replicated across the whole organisation, not just within the change function. And where we found ourselves without having to use day rate contractors more than we would have liked to, especially within our fixed sort of term roles, if you like. I would say since this report has been written that's probably slowed down now. So that risk is stabilised, and the plan always was that once we understand what our portfolio looks like next year, obviously we then overlay that with any requirements. But that's what the risk was there for. But what I would give assurance on is, we're very, very astute to that risk, and we're making sure that only where we have we have looked at every other option about recruitment, that a day rate contractor is the route that we go, because we're well aware of what the implications of that are. So I think it's slowed down, Chair, probably since the last time. I don't think it's as at the point of writing this was right in the middle of summer, and we were having real concerns about recruitment. Not that I would say that they have gone away completely, but probably because we've just slowed down our recruitment activity. So that's on that. The ones that were out of tolerance at the time were around two things around our financials. So again, we were running a bit hot because of the recruitment issues. But again, I think that again, if I had a new risk report here, it probably wouldn't have that on there. The two risks that we've got at the minute are around the spending review. So one is our ability to, there's two things. There's one around reform spend and the new accountable officer process. So we've got a couple of big things sitting and waiting for approval. And if we don't get that, then our ability to spend is at risk from that. And obviously our ability to spend where we said we want to spend if our money is reduced next year. They are our two main risks at the moment. Okay, sorry, Chair, did you have a third question, or was that it?
Well, I was going to ask about the prioritisation exercise that you've referred to. I'm not sure if you'll be the right person to answer, Kerry, but I mean, clearly I have great confidence in our resources committee, who are going to be involved in this and looking at this coming up in later in the month. But the rest of the board will be very interested to see the output from that work and to have an opportunity to shape that as well. So just looking for some clarity around that.
Okay, I'll come in, and then if the DCO page, I'll want to add anything. But I think there's two parts to this. There's the remainder of this financial year, where we're looking at what we potentially want to do for the remainder of the year. That is, as I said at the beginning, that is just looking at, is there anything that we want to sort of slow down slightly? So again, to the point that Paul I mentioned earlier, it's not about, we're not going to do anything big, but it might mean that we want to focus on ensuring that some of the big things are delivered. So for this, the remainder of this financial year, again, we've looked at, we had looked at the financial availability and the resource capacity. So they're the big drivers. Going into next year, the work that we will do, as I mentioned earlier, we'll look at what the organisational priorities are. So the Chief's priorities around C3, response policing, etc. Make sure they're reflected within the portfolio. We will look at that with the obviously exec, include any, we are going to have to obviously put a different slant on it, because we are going to have to look at where we can drive more efficiencies out of the organisation given some of the challenges. So that may mean some of the things on the current portfolio will either have to slow down to a point or pause. I think we just need to be open to that. That will probably be a view that we have to present. But what I would say, we are also looking at the portfolio to ensure that not only that we just focus on things that are currently in delivery, but we do need to have a mix of things that are also in design and in the pipeline, to ensure our pipeline of work and that doesn't all dry up, so we don't put all our eggs in one basket and focus on things that are purely in the delivery space. But we also will have to look at, we've got some big things that are coming down the track that, if we talked about body-worn video at the beginning, that's going to have a massive, impact on both us being able to resource that and obviously being able to afford to do that. So there's some obviously other decisions that'll have to be taken into account as we build that. That process is kicked off now as part of our, as I say, as part of our annual planning. And then we'll look at that and we'll bring that round obviously internally, and it'll come to Resources Committee for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Lynn and David both looking to come in. Yeah. Lynn, did you want to come in first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Maybe just a bit of clarification in terms of the reference to delays through the accountable officer. As the accountable officer, I'd just maybe like to put a bit of explanation around that. Scottish Government have introduced an accountable officer template, and anything over £1 million has to be submitted to them for approval, even if there's a budget for it. So this is obviously across the public sector, it doesn't just impact on ourselves. So I want to assure you that when it comes to the accountable officer and the SPA, it's turned around within an acceptable time frame, and then it goes into Scottish Government for them. They have their own processes for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We just hope they can be as prompt as yourself, Lynn. Thank you very much for that clarification. David, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was going to make the same point as Lynn did, which is the AO template isn't Lynn. Lynn signed stuff off really quickly once she's had a chance to have a look at it. It's more the kind of central government thing. It is causing us quite a lot of problems because effectively we've got two really important business cases that have come through all of our governance at the moment, including the SPA, that are sitting in Scottish Government where we've got budget allocated for it and they're not being signed off. The most worrying one is the Your Leadership Matters business case. Now, members will be aware of the fact that Baroness Casey produced her report into the Met a couple of weeks back now around misogyny and behaviour. Sir Mark Rowley came on to kind of BBC and various broadcasting things talking about the importance of dealing with that and the fact that the Met were going to introduce a leadership and management and training plan. We're already there. We're already kind of doing this stuff. We're well ahead of the kind of curve, but the fact that Scottish Government are blocking our ability to do that is causing us significant concern. So that is escalating up our strategic risk register now. The fact that we're being prevented from actually carrying out the leadership and management training that both officers, staff, unions, Federation, Dame Ailish, Angelina's report, all of those kind of, everyone wants us to do it. Everyone criticises us for not doing it. And it's sitting in a place at the moment where we can't get it out of there. The other thing on reform, we were allocated 25 million in a reform budget. That's the money we use to drive transformation. It isn't our money per se, it's allocated to us, but the money sits with the Scottish Government. It has to be released by them, hence the two business cases I talked about earlier. Scottish Government have come back into us looking to kind of recover or take back some of that budget. In the first instance, they were looking to take 10 million off us. We pushed back, the Chief Constable's pushed back quite hard on that and said that would have a very detrimental impact on our ability to transform. Where we've got to that is we've agreed to hand back 2.8 million of reform funding, and what Scottish Government have been able to do is allocate us 2.8 million of capital. So we've actually used the additional capital to enhance the fleet. We bought some more vehicles, so that has it's had an impact on the transformation portfolio, but we've actually managed to get a different type of benefit out of it. The other thing I was going to mention on the prioritisation is, as Kerry's talking about, there's a very long process, currently kind of active process of looking at the portfolio in terms of what are our priorities, given the changing ebb and flow of how many officers have we got to absorb, change out there, what are the pressures. One of the big issues at the moment is the resource spending review and the effect that could have on the transformation budget, reform budget and our transformation programme, and whether or not, if our 23-24 budget reflects the RSR, would we need to pivot the current transformation programme more into a cost-saving programme? So we're looking at some of the things on the finance side that we may need to do. At the moment, we're still focused very much on capability enhancement in the transformation programme, but that may need to change. We may need quite a strong pivot into the cost saving. We don't want to kind of pull any triggers on that until we know what the budget is, given it's only meant to be the 15th of December. So there's a number of things that sit behind all of this at the moment, which we're having to take into consideration. And really, until we know what the financial picture is going forwards, all we can do is do contingency planning. But hopefully that provides a little bit wider kind of strategic context on that. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you very much. We obviously have to wait and see what is going to be coming down the track for us, but I'm comforted to know that there is some consideration being given to potentially having to pivot the whole programme. That hopefully not, but it's helpful to know that it's something you're looking at. Just before I bring Grant in, can I just ask again on the point of the approvals that you require now from Scottish Government? Clearly very worrying if they don't come through in time to enable us to take particularly the leadership programme forward. Is there anything we can do to escalate our concerns on this? Is there something somebody we should be contacting, somebody we should be speaking to?
I really appreciate the offer, Chair. Thank you. We've raised it at every level in Scottish Government. We have Scottish Government attendees at both Corporate Finance and People Board and the Change Board. We had a Corporate Finance and People Board, I think it was Tuesday, I chaired that. Tuesday, and we had the Change Board and Tuesday afternoon. And again, we raised it, DCC Taylor raised it. I've written to the government flagging the concerns we've got about delaying this. So that they're fully cited. From what I understand, it seems to be caught up in the overall DFM work at the moment, looking at the budget. So they're fully cited, they're fully aware. I don't think there's anything, Lynn's aware of it. It's something we constantly talk about, but really appreciate the offer of additional help. But I think we've got this one fully covered. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Sorry, Grant, again, I'm just going to say I think Lynn might be wanting to come in on that point.
David actually covered nearly all the points I was going to make, just to reaffirm the Justice Division, who we work with closely, are aware of this. It's not completely in their control, though. It's sitting very much at the centre of the Scottish Government finance. So we do raise this, as David said, we've got a call this afternoon with our colleagues in Justice, and we'll raise it again in terms of it being an issue that was raised by the members today.
Okay, thank you very much. Grant, and then Paul after that.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to confirm that as and when new information comes to light and the plan has got to be amended or changed or whatever, the Resources Committee will be having a look at what the current situation is. And we're very acutely aware of the fact that although we approved a number of things some months ago, actually getting them delivered is being held up quite a bit by the lack of approval at Scottish Government stage. So as we get closer and closer towards the end of the financial year, we've not only got to get the approval, but we've actually got to be able to, say, acquire the items that we're going to spend money on. And the whole thing could just be a major problem in actually delivering what we need to do financially, along with the operational impact. But we are very much on the case.
Okay, thank you very much, Grant. Well, I'm sure you are, and I know you will be, but clearly the financial year is coming rapidly to an end, so we need to get moving on these things if we possibly can. Paul.
Yeah, it's just coming back to this point of the need for approval for business cases. Presumably that's not just the SPA and Police Scotland, presumably that's right across the public sector, which must mean when we get some clarity over budgets and things, there's going to be a whole load of people all wanting approval all at the same time. And there's only so many civil servants that can do this. So, I mean, are we not going to have this enormous clog at a critical juncture in the sort of the financial planning cycle?
Yeah, there's definitely potential for a bottleneck, I would think.
Yeah.
So we'll shove our way to the front of the queue if we can.
Yeah, quite.
Thanks, Paul. Does anybody have any further questions on this item? No. Thank you very much then, and thank you, Kerry, for the report. Really very interesting, and we look forward to the next iteration of this. Thank you. Item 5 will not take us very long. I don't think. This is our work plan for the committee, and it's there for your consideration. This is obviously a live document, and we'll be relying on our governance support officer to update it and keep it on track. We do have in here a reference to the organisational learning internal audit report coming to this committee, but it's clearly now going to January, so we'll see that when that comes forward. Does anybody have any comments on the work plan? No. Okay, thank you very much. In which case, we've come to the end of the items that we would agreed